Hello and welcome to another episode of Mark's English History Channel, filmed here on location on the Ypres Salient in Belgium. And today's walk that we're doing is going to concentrate around the area of Sanctuary Wood, Hill 62, Hooge Creator and the Menin Road, and the battles for the Menin Road. And we're starting today's walk here today at the Hill 62 Museum. And this is my favourite museum on the western front of all the museums out here. I first came here in 1998 on a school trip, and every time I've come back to Ypres, this is my fourth time, I've always returned to this one museum. It's actually the oldest museum on the western front. What happened was that when the family who owned this land returned, they found it devastated, obviously due to the fighting, but they found trenches, shell holes, etc. here, and then so they converted it immediately into a museum. It opened in the 1920s. I'm going to show you, there's a lot of stuff in here, all sorts of stuff to see, but the absolute creme de la creme of what they've got here is just over here, and we're just going to take a short walk through it, because they have in here a whole second line trench system. So to give you a rough idea where we are, Ypres is out in that direction, the town of Ypres is out in that direction, so we're outside up on the front line itself. The Menin Road is running directly left to right as we look with the Germans kind of looping around. Hill 62 is the green hill you can see up in front, so these trenches are going up in that direction, and like I say, this is the second line trench system. But we're going to have a walk through here now. If you've watched my videos of the previous walks that I've done on this trip, it has been an extremely muddy wet winter, so this could be very interesting in this trench. Today it's certainly, as you compared to the trench that I visited yesterday, the Ballewarde, the German trench, is significantly wetter. As you can already see, there's a lot of puddles in here, so this is conditions that the men fighting in these trenches on the western front during the years of the First World War will be becoming accustomed to. And also in here you've got dugouts, you've got, so have a quick look in here, and there are a few tunnels systems. Yeah, so this one's just a concrete dugout. In there it is starting to foul a little bit at the back. So possibly a command post or a shelter. But you can see what a trench system was like. So first and foremost, in a trench system, you're not looking a direct straight line, you're looking forward and front fire bays. Like I say, this is a second line position, so front line is further out in that direction. However, when we talk about front and second line positions, we're not talking about, damn, once we move under here, we're not talking about, actually depends, sometimes there's a bit of support trenches, sometimes a second line. It's a complete makeup of a trench, and as you can look out across here, you can see shell holes and craters, and a bit further up there is a tunnel. Now, due to the weather conditions, I'm a bit dubious about attempting to go through it. I will try, but I think that trying to push our way through the tunnel might be a bit risky at this stage. But it's fairly, to be honest, it's drier than I thought it was going to be in here. I remember when I came here in '98, it being significantly wetter than this. But let's have a look down here. So we've come down here, and you've got a trench pump down here. So this is what this sort of area is what was known as a sap. So an area slightly forward of the line. As we move back down here, and it's actually the Canadians that took the hill up at Hill 62, but we'll come on to that later in the walk. We move down again, another piece to manoeuvre under. Now this is the entrance to the tunnel. Have a little look inside, so let's have a go through this. Well, we're going to go pretty dark now, but we'll see where we can get through to. So actually inside here, it's not as bad as I first anticipated. In terms of the wetness, and I can already start to see the light coming at the other end. And as the tunnels like these were dug in the trenches to allow access for troops, unimpeded access for troops, to move supplies, rations, ammunition, etc. from supportive lines like the trench we was just in up to the front line without any molestation from the enemy forces. Obviously the Germans, as we could see, were holding the high ground here on Hill 62, which prevented which meant that they were overlooking the British troops, or British and Commonwealth troops, and Canadians were stationed here for a large part of the war, from overlooking them, and so had range of fire down onto them. So troops and here were almost continuously under enemy observation, which meant that they were quite liable to be under enemy fire. So moving troops, munitions, rations, all the kind of things that they would need up at the front line up was a thought process. So what they did here and in many places was to dig tunnels like this one, which enabled that movement to go on unimpeded. So here we are now, we're just coming out of the tunnel. Obviously the tunnel would have had some form of lighting going on, so it would have been a little bit easier to traverse in those days. And then we've come out here, so we entered the tunnel approximately over there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look back round, take a look at some of the other parts of what there is here. Around Ypres, out on the Somme, there's not too many locations that have been preserved like this. This is the best, this is the most unique and the best type that I'm aware of. Around the time of the centenaries of the First World War, so we're looking 10 years ago now, you did get a lot of trench reconstruction, so places like Ballewarde, Hooge Creator Museum that we'll go to a little bit later, began to develop. And see there we've just crossed the corrugated iron bridge, and we're walking along the top now. I'm just trying to get my bearings as to where everything would be, because ordinarily dugouts, so the German positions are up there, because you can tell there the dugout is going into the wall facing the enemy, the shelter position, because the last thing you want if you're sat in there having your rest and your cup of tea is a random shell pitch from the random artillery shell pitched over from the enemy just bursting straight into your dugout. So the last thing you want, so dugouts would always be positioned into the firing wall, firing wall would normally have a parapet built up, and then on this side, the back side, there'd be what is known as a parados, and that will be slightly lower, but still give you some form of protection. Like I say, now this is a support line. This isn't the actual front line, so you see things like more dugouts and things like that appear in a support line to what you would find in a front line. You can see here the shell holes, and that gives you an indication of just how wet it has been in this area recently. So like I say, you find more, because this is the area where when a battalion would take over a line of trenches, a section will be up in the front line, another section will be back here, and this is more, the support line is more where you would come to rest during your period at the front. And again, you can see here a nice layout, and you can really see the zigzag of a trench, and now they zigzagged for a reason, and that reason was so that if a shell, as we're talking about shells being pitched over from enemy positions, if one was to land in a trench and it was a dead straight line, what you would find is that the explosive force would traverse down the trench. However, being zigzagged like this, it would limit the area that force could go, and the amount of casualties it would thus receive. Likewise, should a German raid be able to penetrate a trench, it stops a German machine gunner or rifleman getting in and just having free rein at shooting. It blocks off his ability to fire. So we've come now down to the far end of the trench, this trench system here, and we're just going to loop round and then go back inside it. But yes, like I say, this is one of my favourite museums here on the salient itself. I would always thoroughly recommend this to be a visit of anyone who's visiting the salient, to make their way, or to the Western Front in general, to make their way to this location, because it does give a unique perspective of the war. And like I say, when I talk about getting your boots dirty, obviously case in point in here, but this really does give you that opportunity to get your boots dirty in a way that is hard to replicate elsewhere. So as you see down here, you can only go down a little way, but this is a communication trench running back, and so this would run back to the next line of trenches. So normally you'd have 3 lines per defensive line. You'd normally have 3 trenches. You'd have your fire trench, your support trench, and your reserve trench in 3 lines, and then communication trenches will stretch between both. So as I say, it's a secondary position. So this in fact is a support trench here. Communication trench there, going back to reserve trench, and then the tunnel leading from this position up to the front line trench, which is further up on facing hill 62 there, and you can see here roughly how deep. I see it's not fully 100 years of erosion has created for some of this, but a deeper trench is. And what's most common and most famous about the struggles around Ypres is the conditions, and like I say, we're coming up now to another small dugout. So if you compare these to the types of dugouts the Germans had, the deep dugouts like the bunkers, these are basically just a shelter more than anything else, but would give the soldiers the opportunity to rest, to cook, to eat, to drink, and rudimentary, to give them a rudimentary bit of protection against the weather as well, in terms of rain, that there is some shelter you can get under, even if it's just for a few minutes. As we come back round, so that's pretty much, as you can look across now, you can see even more of the trench system unfolding. So I'm going to turn the camera off here. Inside the museum, like I say, there's lots of stuff here. One of the best parts of this museum, other than the trenches, is they've got a fantastic photo collection to sit and watch. So I'm going to go in the museum, have a look at that, and then afterwards I'll pick you up on the other side of the outside the museum as we start our walk. So we've come out of the museum just behind me now, and we're heading down this road here known as Maple Avenue. So this road didn't exist during the First World War. It's been built since then to allow access to both the museum and the Hill 62 Canadian Memorial Site a bit further along, which we'll come to at the end of our walk today. Now let's just go back though and try to explain where we are in terms of the Ypres Salient. So, and actually to go even further back, where we are on the Western Front, just in case this is the first time you've come across any of my First World War videos. Now, Western Front runs approximately 700 kilometres from the North Sea coast in Belgium at a town called Ypres, down to the French-Swiss border near the city of Ballewarde. So it runs from the airport, it swings through Belgium to the flooded Ypres plain, and that section of the line, generally for most of the war, is held by Belgian troops, from down to a town called Bozinga. Now Bozinga is the tip of the Ypres Salient, and from there the line swings out around the Belgian town of Ypres, down then along the Menin Ridge, out into Artois, over places like Luz, and up onto the high ground around Menin Ridge and the Notre Dame de Lorette. From there it moves down across the area that we will associate with today with the Battle of the Somme, crosses the River Somme, where just to the north of the River Somme the French troops take over the line, manning the line, and from there it swings down through and past the city of Rheims, through the areas of the Chemin de Main, battles of 1917, past the 1916 battlefields of Verdun, and then eventually down to the Franco-Swiss border. That's the Western Front in a nutshell. Now back to the Ypres Salient. So the Ypres Salient, the best way to describe it, and it's an analogy that was told to me by a battlefield guide last year, Tim Furlow, think of it as a saucer. And Ypres, the city, is the little indentation in the bottom where you rest your cup. The Germans hold the top ridge, and the British are in that little top of the lip in between and slightly higher up. Now we enter the line at Bozinga at roughly 12 o'clock. It swings all the way around and it comes out around about Hill 60, which is that dividing point between the Ypres Salient and the Menin Ridge, and that's around about 6 o'clock. So as we head down this road now, I'm going to talk about the cemetery to the left in a moment, and to the Menin Road. Now the Menin Road runs from Ypres over to our leftish position, all the way across our frontage, past the area known as Hooge, and then on and out up onto the Bellewaede Plateau, scene of fierce fighting in the 1914 First Battle of Ypres. Now that is one of the main trunk roads in and out of Ypres, and if you follow it all the way back to Ypres, you now come to a roundabout, and that roundabout at the time was a crossroad, and it was known as Hellfire Corner. So that's just a rough idea as to where we are. So we are currently just to the south of the Menin Road, heading down towards it, and we've now come up to the Sanctuary Wood Cemetery. So before we go in, I'll just read a few facts. Like all of my videos that I do, I don't actually film inside cemeteries, so I don't think it's respectful. So I'll read out I'll look at some few facts and figures about the cemetery from the book that I'm using today as my primary source, is Paul Reed's excellent Walking the Salient guide. So I'm just going to find a few facts and figures about this cemetery, just to read before we go in, okay? Behind me is a concentration cemetery, so the land was gifted by the Belgian government to the British for a cemetery, and bodies were brought in from the battlefield around Sanctuary Wood. So Sanctuary Wood itself is this woodland that's behind the houses here, and as we look back up Maple Avenue, back up towards the museum and the Canadian Memorial, all the woods on this side, it's all been replanted since the war, and it got the name Sanctuary Wood because this was where troops were often moved back to this wooded area during the First Battle of Ypres for their own protection. As the battles for Ypres continued, three major battles, First, Second and Third Ypres, often known as Passchendaele, but multiple exchanges in between. So for example, the capture of Hill 62, the best way to describe it is like an incoming wave and tide. It goes in, it comes out. So sometimes this area lived up to its name of being a sanctuary, other times it was right in the thick of it. During the war, there was 3 cemeteries located in and around Sanctuary Wood. These were nearly almost all obliterated during the First World War itself. As a result, we have an enormous amount of unknown soldiers buried in this cemetery as these men have been found and brought in and laid to rest here. In the book, it equates the total numbers here as 1,734 British, 142 Canadian, 88 Australian, 18 New Zealand, 3 South African, 3 Newfoundland and 1 German. Of these, 1,353 are unidentified. That's nearly 80%. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and have a look round. There's one grave in here that's visited more than any other, and that's the grave of Lieutenant Gilbert Talbot. Now his father was the Lord Bishop of Winchester, and he, along with some other religious friends, decided to buy a property in an area behind the lines in the town of Popperinga and open it for soldiers to rest in, and that got the name as Talbot House, named after the man whose idea it was to purchase this land, this building, but also he's involved in the Tok H Christian Society. So that's why, and his son is buried in here. But we're going to go in and have a look. Like I said, I don't film inside, but what I'll do is I'll pop some pictures on the slideshow at the end of the film for you. This is along Maple Avenue from the cemetery at Sanctuary Wood, and we're now looking across the fields here, directly up to the Hooge Creator Cemetery, and then beyond the Hooge Creator Chapel, which now houses the excellent Hooge Creator Museum. Just to the right of the museum, the chapel and the museum, is where the Hooge Creator stands and where Hooge Chateau used to stand as well. That's the building with the orange roof is the newly constructed Hooge Creator, and it also gives you a fine view across what is known as Bellewaede Ridge and up to the area of where would have stood Chateau Wood, which is the area in which the Bellewaerde theme park now stands. Now in this field directly in front of us, in 1915, prior to the war, was another wood, and that was known as Zouave Wood, and it was here on the 30th of July 1915 that the 14th Light Division was stationed, and attacked by Germans. And the importance of that attack was that it was the first time the Germans had used flamethrowers against British positions. Okay, it came at enormous cost to the British. It nearly broke the line, but the Light Division did manage to hold. But this is the location that first gas attack took place. Not gas attack, flamethrower attack took place. We've now come up across the road, so we were down in that direction. We've come up to the Menin Road, which is now running left to right in front of us, and we've now come up here to this position here on the Bellewaede Ridge line, and it was here was located a wood at the time, again long gone during the war, never replanted afterward, named as Ballewarde, and it was captured by the Germans in early 1915, and in the summer of 1915 it was tasked to the honourable artillery companies and other units of the 3rd Division to recapture it, and they were ordered to recapture it on the 16th of June 1915. Now, in Paul's book there is an extract here that I'm going to read from you, and the extract is from HS Clapham, who described the fighting here as full of horrors, and I almost feel competent to write another story of a descent into hell. His battalion had gone into the German front line to consolidate its position. Flags were used to indicate progress in the attack, and some were seen in the second line. It was then that whistles blew and Clapham's company was moved into no man's land. He found the forward trenches full of dead, and the order came round to dig in. Clapham and his comrades began the laborious task of moving barbed wire from the old German parapet onto the parados, so from the front of the trench onto the rear. Sandbags were filled and new communication trenches dug, but the captured lines were pummeled by German artillery and casualties mounted. A German attack followed, a further heavy bombardment, but it was beaten back. Eventually relieved, Clapham noted, "We have lost half of the battalion and nearly all of our officers, including the colonel and second in command. Those of us who are left look worn and old, and our nerves are in tatters." Along, so the last where we stopped a moment ago was just to the left of these farm buildings that you can see here, and we've now come up to this wooded area here. So this is again is another replanted woodland, known as railway wood. And it's known as railway wood because at the time it bordered onto the back of the wood bordered onto the Ypres railway line, which is, if you look, there's the road that now leads from Ypres Hellfire Corner roundabout out to Zonnebecker, the jumping off point for the start of the Battle of 3rd Ypres in the advance onto the village of Passchendaele. And if you've watched the My Passchendaele video, we walk along a segment of that disused railway. But this is railway wood. It's a private wood, so we can't actually access it, unfortunately. But there is, up until recently, I'm not sure, because of the hedgerows, etc., that's in there, we can't really see in there. But there is signs of the shell fire and war damage still in there. But this area was also an area heavily mined as well, and in the book we do have a passage from Major William Billy Congreve, who would win a posthumous Victoria Cross on the Somme, when he visited this sector just after the 16th of June attack, which we described earlier. Eventually we worked our way around to Railway Wood. Here the mess was very bad. Also the Germans were very close, only about 15 yards away. A burial party of some 60 men arrived and got to work. Everything was quiet while we were up there. Hardly any snipers at work in the German lines, and no shelling. There is no doubt about the value of the ground gained. Looking back towards Ypres from the trench between Railway Wood and Wirewood, you can see every bit of ground. And this goes to show that although these ridges are only a few metres in height above sea level, how valuable they could be. From this point on, Ypres itself is just behind that that cow shed there. You can see it all the way down. So if you imagine actually Ypres is just through there. In fact, if you're up on this position right now, looking down as a German, if this was a German front line as it was, and you're looking down, you can see all of the British activity down there. So you can see why these small ridge lines, as which we're going to move up further to in a moment, even to the crest of, were so important and why they were so bitterly fought over. A little bit further around now from where we were a moment ago at Bellewaede Ridge, which was just over there by that green and silver grey gate, and now we've come up to on the crest of Bellewaede Ridge, and as you look down into Ypres and across what was the Ypres railway, you can see just how dominating a position this is. And again, it's a very small elevation gain, only in metres rather than anything in a few metres really, and very shallow as well. It's a very slight incline up to here, but you can see just how from this position how much of a view that we do have. Obviously you can see down here, it's a bit hard to see because of the buildings, you can just see the vehicles moving along there, down to the Menin Road, down the Ypres railway, and then down into the town of Ypres itself, and another road moving across in the distance. That's the road to Zillebeek, heading down towards Hill 60. So it gives you an idea of where we are. We're on the very apex tip of the salient here. We're talking about Zillebeek over in that direction and Chateau beyond. This is the very edge of it, that 12 o'clock position, so to speak. But the reason why we're up here is the cemetery behind me, and it's a very unique cemetery here there's only across the sacrifice, there's no headstones here, and the reason being is that this cemetery is known as the Royal Engineers Cemetery, and it commemorates 12 men who died in mining operations here on and underneath the Bellewaede Ridge. So we're just going to go up. Like I say, normally I don't film in cemeteries, but being as it's in a unique location, I think that it's worthwhile going in, and also there's some things to show behind as well. So as we're up there, so what I'll do is I'll film from outside of the gated area just to show our respects. So it reads there, beneath this spot lie the bodies of an officer, 3 NCOs and 8 men are attached to the 177th Tunnelling Company Royal Engineers, who were killed in action underground during the defence of Ypres between November 1915 and August 1970. Now, as we come around the monument, or across the sacrifice, you can see beyond a couple of large craters. Now they're fenced off. It's private property, so we can't get in there, but they are visible from here. And under Belgian law, these sites are now officially protected, so these can no longer be filled in by the farmers. So there is some good news to it. And on the back side of the monument, it does list the names of the men who are commemorated on this memorial. So if we go around here just to the start, so we start off with the officers: the Second Lieutenant C.G. Boothby, Corporal R. Brindley, Corporal G.A. Worley were all Royal Engineers. Corporal B.D. Evans, Private T.E. Davis, Private P. Roberts, Royal Welsh Fusiliers. As we come further round, Sapper S. Firth, Sapper W. Spooner, both Royal Engineers, Private E. Poulton, King's Liverpool Regiment. Sapper Mark Carter, M. Carter, Sapper G. A. Chatt, Sapper H. Cotterill, Royal Engineers. Now you do notice that on some of those names they weren't all Royal Engineers. Some were from infantry battalions, Royal Welsh Fusiliers and King's Liverpool Regiment. Now the reason why these men were attached is that often when you're looking at, say, that specifically the Welsh people, soldiers from the Welsh regiments, these were men who grew up in mining communities. Mining was their trade, their day of life. They were skilled, experienced people working underground, and so when these men were identified in being in infantry battalions, they were often transferred into or attached to the Royal Engineers for tunnelling to bring their expertise to that particular field. Okay, so we're going to leave there and then move down and then move into the woods behind, and I'll catch you up in a moment. Behind the Royal Engineers grave, which is just opposite us here, we've just passed the memorial stone to the Liverpool Scottish Regiment, and we're now along behind those mine craters that we saw from inside the Royal Engineers graves, and as you can see, they're quite substantial up here. It's nice now that these sites have been opened up to public view. The book that the walking book that I've got, Paul Reed's Walking the Salient, was written in 1998. So obviously since then we've obviously had the centenary celebrations of the First World War, and I believe that as a result of that, a lot of these areas that were prior to that in private hands, such as this wood and these craters, have been opened up to visitors to explore, with the vast numbers of people coming to these sites. You've only got to come and visit these places. It's February that I'm here, and each night that I've been here on time for, because there was a delay on my ferry coming out due to the weather, that I'm staying in Ypres at a hotel on the Grant Market, directly opposite the famous Cloth Hall, and it's a few minutes walk from there down into the Menin Gate, and I've been there every night for the ceremony, and the amount of people who have attended that each night, considering that they're cold winter's nights. And here you can see shell craters, so less of, not as substantial as the mine craters we saw earlier, but still indication of the heavy fighting that took place here. Again, here you can just see through the trees. If we just move around a bit further, we'll get a better opening of this one here. This is the biggest one that I've seen so far in this wooded area, on this little loop off of the main path, and you can see here just the size of this crater. Obviously it's not anything like the great crater at La Basselle on the Somme, or the Caterpillar crater over at Hill 60, but it's still substantial in size and is an indication that this was blown by an underground method, as compared to the impact craters that we see over there that came from more generic shell fire. These were the mining operations is often forgotten sometimes when we talk about the Great War. The Underground War was extremely significant. Whilst we're in the woods, we're just going to go across here just to see what else there is to see. This is the main path that we need to follow, but whilst we're up here and have the chance to explore, then let's have a look, see what else we can find. So the Underground War is often a forgotten segment of the Great War, and you look at places like up here on Bellewaede Ridge, or what we visited on the Hill 60 walk, Caterpillar Valley, and the mining operation at Hill 60 to undermine key German positions, and you see more evidence of the mine warfare here with yet another crater. And so key German positions, heavily fortified, not necessarily entrenched, but here because of the ground conditions, like we're on a fairly high point of the battlefield here at Ypres, and you can still just see just how muddy conditions are here. And so when you consider entrenched warfare, the conditions that you saw when I was in the trenches down at Sanctuary Wood there, how wet and muddy they got, often in a lot of cases, especially for the German forces, when you can't dig, you build up. And so you see a lot of, although not many examples remaining today. There was the ones out at Langemak in the cemetery and close by the cemetery, for example, but raised pillboxes, bunkers, whatever you'd like to call them, but that gave protection, gave machine gun nests and strong points, command positions, similar to and at Tyncott we saw that as well as an example. So you see there that we've got, and so sometimes the easiest way to take them out was to dig underneath and to mine, and then there became another aspect of the war, the Underground War, mining and counter mining, but also, as well as mining and counter mining, how, once these are blown, what do you do? How do you attack? And this is something that we see, especially when we get down there on this walk itself at Hooge, at the crater at Hooge. What exactly are the men aiming to do? And so when a mine is blown and a German position is blown out as a result, you're then hoping your men can react first. What you need to do is get your men into that crater the moment the debris has settled, manning the opposite lip. So the British are obviously over in that direction. The German front or second lines are around this position here. And so what you're trying to, and so to gain this position, once the mine is blown, is you want your men to get down into the crater up the other side and be manning that side before the German reserves can come forward and capture it, and thus hold it and turn it into what would you best describe as an extended trench system, an extra wide trench, in that's your parapet on that side, that's your parados. You've just got an extra wide version to man, and that's how you then go about taking that ground. So we're heading out now, and we're going away from the area in which the book says we need to be. So we're going to turn round. So at this point, as we're walking back through an area that we've just come and previously explored, we will turn off the recording, and I will catch you up in a moment when we're at our next position. Bellewaede Ridge, and we're now in the hamlet of Hooge, which was what we was looking at earlier on in our walk from across the fields, the other side of where Zouave Wood was located and where the flamefire attack started. So upon coming down, we came down this little road to the right over here, and first of all I went into the Hooge Creator museum. It's a fantastic museum. It's one of my preferred museums my favourite museums on the Salient, and alongside Sanctuary Wood Museum, the two that I would strongly recommend. I did visit another one the other day, the Passchendaele Museum in Zonnebeek. That's very good as well, but I know most people only come here for the day and do a day trip to Ypres, a day at the Somme. So if you are limited for time, I'd avoid spending too much time in museums, to try and get out onto the fields and cemeteries as much as possible. So in that case, the two that I would recommend is the Hooge Creator Museum and Sanctuary Wood Museum. Having come out of the museum, having spent a bit of money in there, because there's always some good little relics on sale in the museum. Last time I bought a Pickelhelber spike in there, and this time I bought the front plate to it as well. So my little German collection is increasing. I'm coming across the road, and we're now at the Hooge Creator Cemetery. Now, Hooge Creator Cemetery is another one of those large concentration cemeteries. However, it did start off life as a frontline cemetery in 1917 for part of the 7th Division, and the figures that are stated in the book and on the Commonwealth War Graves panel inside the museum is that there are 5,800 graves in this cemetery, of which 5,153 are British, 509 Australian, 19 New Zealand, 95 Canadian, and 2 from the British West Indies Regiment. Of these, 3,580 are unknowns. That's over half. Now, with these concentration cemeteries, the reason why you get so many unknowns buried in there is that these men have been buried multiple times, and so in the course of burial, excavation, reburial, their identities are lost. So that's why you find in concentration cemeteries particularly a lot of unknown soldiers that have been buried. So this is Hooge Creator Cemetery. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cross back over the Menin Road. Half of the road is currently closed, which makes it a lot easier to cross for me, and it means for this moment I can actually show you straight down Menin Road, straight towards the spires of Ypres, and at the top of it is the roundabout of Hellfire Corner, which at the time was a crossroads under heavy German bombardment. And if we look up here, we are heading up then towards the Goudevelt Plateau. But we're just going to carry on up the road a little further, up to the location of the Hooge Chateau and the grounds around the Hooge Chateau. So I'll catch you up once I get up there. Into the grounds of the Hooge Chateau. Now, the building that stands here today has been built post-war, and this stands upon the site of the original Chateau stables. The Chateau itself sat much further back over into the area that the Bellewaede theme park now occupies. But the area around the stables was an area of intense fighting, and there is a outdoor exhibition to the First World War here, so I'm just going to go around and show you around that outdoor site at Hooge. Let me just talk about what happened here during the first Battle of Ypres. So it wasn't actually, like I say, it wasn't in this building. This building is a later pre-war construction and actually occupies a site of the stables rather than the chateau itself, which was situated further back into the wooded area of the now today the theme park. However, during the first Battle of Ypres in 1914, this was the site. The chateau was being used as the headquarters of the 1st and 2nd Divisions when a random German shell penetrated the location, the rooms, and injuring several senior officers, including Major General Lomax, who commanded the 1st Division. He was so badly wounded that he would never actually recover from his wounds, and that he would die a few months later whilst home in England. 6 senior staff officers were killed instantly, another dying of his wounds and 2 others wounded. NCOs and men attached to staff and assisting the conference were also injured, and it happened at a crucial point of the battle. It seemed the situation might be lost with the death and wounds of so many important officers, but Major General Monroe, commanding 2nd Division, despite being blown off his feet, went back to command his men, and the Germans were held at the Menin Road. The chateau eventually falls into German hands by 1915, and it becomes part of the frontline mining operation, and evidence of the mining operations that occur in this area can be seen all around. So what we're going to do now is we're going to walk down actually into the outdoor site and just see what's here. And then from there we'll head back along the Menin Road and then head back towards Hill 62. And this is where we started our walk. So we're heading down into the site. It's an open air museum and it's free to visit. So again, somewhere to put on your list. But if you are coming in a group, you do need to advise them. Okay, so here we go. We've got some evidence here. Various caliber shells, leaving some water projectiles on a little handcart that would have been brought up, but help bring things up to the line. Okay, we're going to head now here. We've got a restored German bunker, so let's go down and have a look inside here. So down some steps, and there's another random exploded used shell down there, and we get down inside here. Oh, that's how there's a little light on, and you can see what the inside of a German bunker position would be like. I'm not going to go too much further into because of the wet, how deep the water is in here. There is some pallets that I can stand on, but you can see there a restored German or repaired German bunker as we come back out, and we'll just follow the track around, and you can see here the water from the water pump that's operating inside of the bunker, and you can see obviously a potential firing position there, leaving mortar projectile embedded into the ground. So we'll just take a walk, like I say, around the lake, and the lake itself is the Hooge Creator, of which the museum and the cemetery both get their name. Obviously now looking more like an ornamental lake. But we'll continue our walk around just so you can see exactly what's here. So if you are planning a visit to come out to the Salient, it's somewhere else to put on your list. Some more generic war debris there, lots of expended shell cases, the corrugated iron shelter tops, for example. There's a observation post, a sniping position shield. And as we continue to move around here, unfortunately it does lack for a little bit of explanation as to what things are, and everything does seem a bit haphazard within the location rather than it being a nice it looks like there's a German or a bunker, maybe German, maybe British, later British. What you often find on the Western Front is that once positions fell from one side to the other, a lot of the equipment would be reused. So like a bunker system will be reused. There is a trench system here. I'm going to have a go, see if I can get into it, but the conditions are extremely muddy and I've got hiking boots rather than my wellies on, and that is looking rather boggy. As if the ground holds I'll be okay, but if it gets a bit too wet I might be in trouble. Yeah, so another trench system in place here, just to give you an experience of what a trench was like. I don't know if this one is a reconstruction, if this is a reconstruction or if it's a redug one, but unfortunately that's getting too wet for me. If I had my wellies on I might have tried it, but just in my hiking boots I'm not going to risk that, because that looks extremely deep in there. As we come through, certainly the corrugated iron is new. It's not old like it was at the Sanctuary Wood site. But we're just going to come up here and we're going to hopefully get a look down inside the trench system that they've got here. They're actually, whilst we're talking about trench systems, if you just look back across the ways there to where the Hooge Creator Museum is, they've got a fantastic trench system there. You can see down there just how wet and boggy wet it is in there, which obviously the men serving here at the time would have been experiencing as well. But yeah, that's that area. Like I say, there is a bunker over there as well as the one occupying that we've recently visited. And as we come up to the point where if the trench system was accessible, you can certainly see from here just how wet it is in there, and as to why I didn't go in. And we're going back, the Hooge Museum has a fantastic trench walkthrough. I believe it's closed in the winter. It might only be open to groups, I'm not 100% sure. I have been in there but only on a group tour. But the good thing about their trench system is that it starts off as a German trench and halfway round it changes to a British trench, so you do get to see the differences of how the two different armies constructed their trench systems. So coming up over the higher point now, and again we're back to just generic war debris. But yeah, so there's another example of trenches. Like I say, whether or not it's, I don't know if I think there's probably a recut trench by the look of things, but Still, if you are in the area and you're wanting to see more of the trenches, there's obviously the one that we at the museum at Passchendaele also has a good trench walkthrough as well, and that is very similar to the system that they've got in the museum at Hooge, where you do a horseshoe and you start off in a German trench, and then you come all the way around into a British, so that when you're actually in the trenches and you look across, you're facing the other trench there, whereas the one at Hooge, it's a single straight line that you walk through, but very, very good. And the one at Hooge does have a good no man's land exhibit. You don't get to go into it, you're only looking at it from within the trench, but when you look out and you see the battlefield debris and the barbed wire up and things like that, it does give you an idea of what you would see when you're looking out over a trench. And now we're coming out of the Chateau area and we're going to move up to the next point of the walk. It was recaptured by British forces on the 25th of September 1917 as part of the Third Battle of Ypres, often referred to as the Battle of Passchendaele, even though Passchendaele is quite a long way off to our left. But this area now that we're walking alongside, vague shrubbery and with the theme park beyond, this is the area, if you look at trench maps or any of the time or any of the maps of the First World War maps, you will see listed as Chateau Wood. Now Chateau Wood is famous because one of the most recognisable photographs from the First World War is one of a Australian party carrying supplies coming through a sodden, battle-scarred land with dead trees, destroyed trees that are just pretty much just tree stumps or just trunks, walking across some duck balls across a flooded, battle-scarred land. Now, as you move, that photograph was taken here at Chateau Wood. Very hard now to imagine, given that there is now a large theme park and car park here, but you know, life moves on, and for the people of Ypres, how much is the land, are they not to be able to extend any further from the town because of the locations? But that photograph was taken somewhere around this location, and we've come up now to the memorial here to the King's Royal Rifle Corps, and at this point it's about a kilometre down the road to the next stop, so I'm going to turn the video off now whilst we're at this monument. Fully up the Menin Road here, up onto even more higher ground, as you can see by looking back behind me. And this little crossroads here, this was known on the trench maps as Clapham Junction, and at the crossroads there's two memorials. So one on the left hand side is to the first, just check it exactly, First Battalion of the Gloucestershire Regiment, who fought here and held this position on the Menin Road on that first Battle of Ypres in the autumn of 1914. And then the regimental, then on the right hand side of the road you've got the divisional monument to the 18th Division, who are widely regarded as one of the finest divisions that fought in the Great War. And on it is listed some of the regiments that fought in it. So the 8th Norfolk, the 8th Suffolk, the 10th Essex, 6th Royal Berks, 8th Royal Berks, 33rd Battery, 11th Fusiliers, 2nd Bedfordshire, 7th Bedfordshire, 6th Northamptons, 12th Middlesex, 7th Queen, 7th the Buffs, 8th East Surreys, 7th Royal West Kents. So numerous county divisions that fought in the 18th Division, and the memorial here shows the battles from 1916 through to 1918, when for a large part they were actually here in and around Ypres. There's actually a second memorial to the 18th Division on the Somme, where they fight with distinction as well. So that's the memorial to the 18th Division. Along here, so if you look through the tree line there, you can just see a white building. Now that white building stands on the site of an earlier chateau at the time of the war, and that was known on trench maps as Stirling Castle. Now it fell to the Germans during the First Battle of Ypres, and it remained relatively behind the line. It remained behind the lines until the Third Battle of Ypres in 1917. Obviously, by the time we get to that stage, the chateau itself is largely destroyed due to the artillery fire. However, it had been heavily reinforced by machine gun posts and bunkers. So being behind the lines for quite some significant time of the war enabled the German engineers to fully establish defensive positions there. On the 31st of July 1917, the position was attacked by the 90th Brigade of the 30th Division, when men of the Manchester Powers Battalions advanced under heavy fire. The 17th Battalion King Liverpool Regiment, the Liverpool Pals, then came up to support, but it was units from the 21st Brigade which finally cleared Stirling Castle that day and held the defence line east of it in this direction. The road that we're now walking on, it was known at the time as Green Jacket Drive, because members of the King's Royal Rifle Regiment held this line during that battle, early war battle of the autumn of 1914, then known as the Battle of Ypres, but will be later become known as the First Battle of Ypres. And that shows you how far out we've now come on this walk, because we're now on the battlefields of that first battle. We've headed up onto the area known as the Bellewaede Plateau. So we've moved across throughout this walk the front lines of three of the battles that occurred around Ypres. And when we talk about the three battles of Ypres, and you can and there's more. There's more, so some of them go under different names. So for example, we have the Third Battle of Ypres, but the Menin Ridge is close to this sector, and then you get the Battle of the Lys, which is 1918, and that's the last German offensive here, and that was down in that area again around the Menin Ridge, Hill 60 area. If we just move across quickly whilst you've got the gate here, you can just have a little look into the area that was known as Stirling Castle. It is private ground, so we can't actually get in and have a look, but it is believed that shell holes and trenches still exist in the area down there, within the grounds, or signs of them. So as we now come down here, we're heading now back in the direction of Hill 62, which if you go around the corner should be relatively in front, in our line of sight, and back to the start of the walk. But like I say, but going back to the names of these battles, the first Battle of Ypres, the second Battle of Ypres and the third Battle of Ypres, you've also got, like I say, the Menin Ridge battle, the Battle of the Lys, where the Germans, other than the first battle in 1914, the Battle of the Lys is the closest the Germans come to capturing the town of Ypres during the spring offensives the Germans launch. However, they're beaten back, and then you have a fourth battle here, which, albeit is predominantly Belgian troops involved, and that is the breakout from the Ypres salient in the last 100 days of the war and the advance to victory during that period leading up to the armistice on the 11th of November. So we're now, like I say, we're now approaching Hill 62. It's this area here, the area in front of us, and it gets the name Hill 62 because it's 62 metres in height, and so that's why Hill 60, which is to the south of Hill 62, is a lower number, because that's 60 metres in height. So the hills weren't numbered numerically, so hill number 1 wasn't close to the coast, and hill whatever it would be down by the Swiss Alps. So they were purely numbered on trench maps, but with the height in metres, and so they then got the names locally as Hill 60 and Hill 62, and likewise other hills beyond. So that's where these names come from. So like I say, we are approaching it, we are on the walk back. This is now quite a long just drag to get back, so I will check back in with you all once I get up onto Hill 62 and before we finish the walk. To Hill 62. Now Hill 62 was held by Canadians in the beginning of June 1916, and it was one of the only final pieces of land, high ground, that was still in British and Empire forces control, and so the Germans were determined to take it. So on the 2nd of June 1916 they launched an assault across the front from Hooge over to Observatory Ridge, but Hill 62 was the main focus. So a heavy artillery barrage that landed up here created a gap 800 metres wide, through which large numbers of Germans, mostly Württemberger troops, poured. During this assault, the Canadian commander, General Mercer, was killed, along with 640 men of the 4th Canadian Mounted Rifles alone. Oh, beg your pardon. The whole in the defences, over 8,000 Germans came through. So as you come up here, you'll see the standard Canadian memorial, the square tableau. That's the same. The only two places the Canadian forces fight that don't receive that monument are at Vimy Ridge and the Brilliant Soldier at Vancouver Corner. The rest of the soldiers, everywhere else that Canada fights, this is the monument that is placed here. And from up here you can see the advantage that holding this position gives you, if you look off, then in front you can see the spires of Ypres. You're looking across part of the battlefield heading over towards Hill 60 and the bluff, and you can see the position with which the Germans assaulted from. On the 13th of June, the Canadian Corps Commander Sir Julian Byng launches a counter-attack and pushes the Germans back off these slopes. And so you can see, as I say, you can see from the dominant position up here just how important it was to hold this ground. As you come across, you'll see down into across towards Ypres, and the road that leads us down there, Maple Avenue, where we started our walk today, and down back to the museum where we started our walk today, was specifically constructed after the war to allow access up to this site and this memorial. The museum building is just through the trees there, and the trenches that we were in at the start of this video are just inside those trees. So we'll just now come up to the monument. So it was named, the Canadians also, as well as it was called Hill 62 on trench maps, but Canadians gave it the name Mount Sorrel, which is what it's listed as on their battle honours. So here at Mount Sorrel, and on the line from Hooge to St Hello, the Canadian Corps fought in defence of Ypres, April to August 1916. And so here, as with elsewhere on the Canadian monuments, it gives you an orientation. So Ypres straight ahead, Hill 60 off in that direction, and the Menin Ridge over in that direction to give you an understanding. Hooge, where we was earlier, straight off down Maple Avenue. As we saw, it's a twisty turny road, but it's almost a straight line to Hooge. And then Zonderbeek in that direction, where the Canadians will fight and wrestle Crest Farm away from the Germans. And so here we are at the top of the walk. The memorial site here at Hooge Hill 62, and we're heading back down Maple Avenue towards the museum where we started today's walk and where I've left my car. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for watching. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button, hit the share, drop a comment, and if you really like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you'll find all my other content on. If you're interested in the Great War, I've got some videos on there from the Somme. If you're interested in Second World War, I've got some Normandy videos. I've got all more lecture-based content as well online. I'm looking in the near future to be putting a few more lecture-based content out rather than just these location and walk tours. So if you're interested in any of that, share this stuff around. The more likes and subscribers I get, the more happy I am. And lastly, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Mr. Paul Reed for whose book Walking the Salient I've been using today, and where a lot of the facts and the information that I've been imparting to you has come from. They're a fantastic book set. I've got 2 of the First World War ones. There's 3 actually out. It's just the Ypres one that I haven't got at the moment. Otherwise, he's got a book on the Somme and on Ypres as well, and also there's one on D-Day if you're interested in the Second World War. So check them out, published by Pen and Sword. So they're on their website. If you're really lucky, have a look on Naval and Military Press. They might be doing a deal on them at that point in time. But no, give them a check out, have a look. Like I say, there's only so much you can learn from reading a book. So come out to these locations, go to the museums, but make sure, the most important thing I say is put your boots on, get out, go for a walk, because you can understand a far lot more about the places that these men fought and died and suffered in by actually walking in their footsteps rather than just reading about them while sitting in a comfy armchair. So thank you for watching. Hopefully see you soon on another episode. Bye bye.